start the live stream. All right. Welcome, everybody. Wow, what a crowd. Thanks for coming. Cut the noise for now. You can talk afterwards. I am glad you're here at 6 o'clock on a Sunday. Thank you, thank you, thank you. For those online, excuse me, sorry, there was some crowd control. We had a lot of people coming in. The toilets, the men's are there. The women's are not marked, but they're on that side there. And there's drinks over here. It is 6 o'clock on a Sunday. I want to thank those people who are online. For those in the audience, we're going to have about 30 minutes of presentation, and then there'll still be like 20 minutes or so left for Q&A discussion. So keep in mind questions. This presentation, and for those of you online, the same is true. Please put your questions in the chat to the live feed, and we'll read them out and address them during Q&A. I think this is probably the first time anybody here might have been to a Bitcoin presentation, but it's probably not the first time you guys have heard or dealt with Bitcoin. You've probably heard about it 100 times, often in a negative light. And I want you to write those fears, concerns, the things you hear down, or say them to me during that discussion. Because this presentation really doesn't discuss that, but I do want to get into those if we have time afterwards. So you guys are the guinea pigs. You're my friends, family, etc. And this is really a bit of a trial run. Hopefully by the end of it, you'll get a better idea of why I'm even doing it. Maybe I'll get a better idea of why I'm doing it. But you know, it has a few shticks in it. It's kind of more of a performance than a presentation, so to speak. There are parts that are meant to be funny, so it's fine to laugh. It's also fine. Some of them might fall flat. That's all right. They're laughing online. So I want to thank a few people. I want to thank Vicky, who's manning the camera and has helped organize, really curate this whole thing, including the hiring of the rest of the cast. We have Izzy, who's on sound and visual, and his lovely wife, Arpa, all who've helped. So thank you very much. I want to thank Lodge Fulch and the Masons for providing such an excellent venue. Thank you. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So you'll see that this is not financial advice at all. I'll double down on that. I have no financial expertise. I have no financial licenses. I'm not an expert on Bitcoin or anything Bitcoin related technology. I'm not really an expert in anything. And so I definitely want to stress this is an everyman's presentation for hopefully other everymen and everywomen. It is not in any way trying to give you an idea of what to invest in, etc. The first thing I want to do is I want to show you a clip. I want to show you a clip from a movie, Interstellar. It's the docking scene, if you remember that movie. We'll talk about it afterwards. The only important thing to remember starting it is that everything was going fine up in this space station by this planet and until it suddenly wasn't. And then all shit went loose and things were flying out of control. So enjoy for the next 4 minutes, Interstellar.
And then we can talk about completing the mission.
Dr. Mann, listen to me.
This is not about my life or Cooper's life. This is about all mankind. There is a moment.
It is not.
Cooper, there's no point in using our fuel to
Analyze the endurance it's spent.
Cooper, what are you doing?
Docking.
Endurance rotation is 67, 68 RPM.
Expand with the retro thrusters.
It's not possible.
No, it's necessary.
Endurance is hitting stratosphere.
She's got no heat shield.
Hey, she ready?
Ready. Cooper, this is no time for caution.
Pace, if I black out, you take a stick. Stars, you ready to engage the docking mechanism?
Endurance is starting to heat.
20 feet out.
I need 3 degrees starboard, Cooper.
10 feet out.
Cooper, we are lined up.
Initiating spin. Come on, Tars. Come on, Tars.
We are locked, Cooper.
Locked. Easing up. Easy. Easy. Retro thrusters. Main engines on. Pushing out of orbit. Come on, baby. Killing main engines. Okay, we're out of orbit.
Okay. Great dramatic scene there. There's two things that I really like about that scene, which I like about all sort of like deep space movies that do this, which is like the International Space Station travels 28,000 kilometers an hour around the Earth. And you wouldn't know that being on the space station. And it does take something, else outside of your system that's fixed in space that would help you know it's spinning out of control. So the first time is when Matt Damon gets sucked out of that portal in less than a second. You realize how fast that thing's traveling. And the second one is when Matthew McConaughey's trying to match that thing's spin, which I think they said something like 66 rotations a minute. And there's there where he starts initializing the spin of his own space shuttle, and all of a sudden the whole system gets really still because he's moving at the same speed as the docking station. And the only way that you can tell that they're all hurtling at that crazy rotation is the planet and the other celestial bodies in the background that are moving extremely quickly. So when people ask me, I think I would have asked why you wanted to give this presentation. The main reason is that I feel like I'm a passenger on the space station, right? And we all are. And unlike here, they know, they've done the physics or they've gone to class, they know that they're traveling at that speed. We don't know that. We're just sort of born into it. And it takes something ripping by the porthole window that lets you know just how fast you're going. And I felt like Bitcoin, and I want to alert my other fellow space station travelers, my other space travelers, hey, there's something going on here. So the structure of this presentation is going to be in three parts. The first part is going to be my everyman's journey into the world of not adulting, so parenthood, real jobs, investments, let's buy a house, and hopefully it will relate to the everyman and every woman out there who, like me and my wife, weren't necessarily wanting to be deputized as financiers or financial planners or investment gurus, but are kind of being forced to in this system. The next part of the story is going to be zooming out and doing a thought experiment to try to explain to everyone exactly what the problems are with the current system. And it's really impossible to talk about Bitcoin without talking about the current problems. And what often is the case is that people talking about Bitcoin to their friends or family, whatever, jump right into all the solutions, and they haven't fully the problem to begin with. So that's what that's there for. And the third part is going to, not till the third part, are we actually going to talk about Bitcoin as a solution to the problems. So what I'll start with is me and my wife's journey in 2000. If you can bring yourself back to 2012, we decided to buy a home here in Darwin, right? It was Australia. It was, I don't know, that's what you do. You buy homes. All our parents seem to buy homes and do just fine. Everyone was saying buy a home. That's what everyone says everywhere. There was no one in our lives, whether it said, no, don't buy a home. The advice was kind of on the margins of that. It was when to buy, where to buy. But people don't ever just say, really, should you buy a home? It's a national sport here. You buy a home, number goes up, everything's fine. It was, 2012 in Darwin. We had Impex, if you guys remember, okay? It was making millionaires out of coffee baristas. Everything was going up. So, we did what we were told. Everybody said, it's as safe as houses. Safe as houses. Everybody should do this, right? Safe as houses? Do we really think it's safe as houses? They're safe? Have you even been to Darwin? Half the properties are in the flood zone. The other half aren't coded. It's the same half. We're talking about Karama here, not Fitzroy in the early 2000s. Give me a break. In fact, it is not so safe in houses. You've got termites and you've got cyclones, and you can ask the people in LA right now if they feel like their houses are safe, if you know what I mean. So there are, things you have to maintain, things you have to insure. If you don't live in the house, you need to tenant the house. There's body corporates. There are rates. You have to actually ask yourself if a property, even after you've paid it off and you have these ongoing costs, do you really own it? So what did we do? We held it for 8 years and sold. Did we make any money? Zero, right? We broke even, and we were happy with breaking even. We were then in a situation where we had, a certain amount of money from equity. Even if we didn't make the money, we decided we didn't want to be property owners. So what were we going to do with that cash? Were we going to put in a savings account? Do you remember those? That was kind of big when we were young, and it was like IAG or ING, and they had 2%, maybe they had 3%, and that's what you made. Do you remember that savings account? You tried to put your money there and you saved it. Savings account. I mean, what a joke, right? Savings account. Does anybody even still today use savings accounts? I certainly don't. It's a good time. I mean, I'm telling you, savings accounts. I saved more money at McDonald's during Monopoly Month, okay? And I had a cheeseburger at the end of that. Maybe some apple slices. They're healthy, okay? It makes McDonald's okay. Come on. Give me a break. No one saves in a savings account. Anyway. So, it brings me to another class of assets. And this is the boring part, so I'm just going to skip it. But basically, the bottom column here are a number of asset classes. They might not have your favorite asset class, but it doesn't really matter. Insert yours. The point is that it's a 20-year return from 2000 to 2020 on a variety of assets class. For example, you have the S&P 500 here. All right, so 7.5% return per year on average, and those are the top stocks in the world's top stock, U.S. stock exchange. So that's pretty good, et cetera. You also have a whole world of, financial planners and investment brokers, et cetera, who, for a fee, will tell you the perfect combination of those things to put your money in. And that's where Amy and I were. We didn't really want to know what to do, but the reason I do have this chart up here are these two yellow lines. So the first is this consumer inflation, right? So that's the consumer price index, or the measurement of when the money supplies increase faster than the goods and services that they're buying. And so the price on those goods and services go up. And everybody accepts that. The more insidious inflation, the monetary inflation, isn't felt right away. It takes a number of years sometimes, decades sometimes, to be felt. But that monetary inflation is the actual increase in the money supply. In this case, it would be USD, but the Australian dollar wouldn't be much different. And it would show you that you're contending against these different forces that are actually devaluing all of these assets, because you have to deal with this inflation. Now, I actually did buy Bitcoin around this time, and I was trying to dabble in what to do about this. I bought Bitcoin in 2018. I bought a whole Bitcoin for around 5,500 AUD, right? And to put that in perspective, a Bitcoin is now worth over 150,000. It's trading around that today. So that is like a 30x investment, which would be pretty good if I'd held on to the Bitcoin, which I didn't, right? And which brings me to another point, which I didn't really understand what I had. It was sort of more of a fun internet money casino thing with me. I tripled my money and I sold it. I had kids, I had a mortgage. That's what you do. And one of the memes that comes up in Bitcoin Twitter is, everybody gets Bitcoin at the price you deserve. So, I guess I got it at the price I deserve. I think it's a stupid saying. Everybody gets Bitcoin at the price you deserve. I mean, come on, please. That's for Q&A. So, you think you really deserve your Bitcoin? What did you buy it at? Do you really think you deserve anything in life? I mean, what are you, 8 years old? What do we deserve, really? Your parents didn't deserve you living in their basement until you were 28, masturbating to Bitcoin videos all day. Your mom certainly didn't deserve to wash your sheets, did she? Come on, give me a break. Give me a break, I said. So, what we have here is a situation where we've now discovered something. We know it's something special, but we're not quite sure what it is. And this is what took me the years to get to where I am today. And I'm going to try to condense it in a simple thought experiment for you. And it's a thought experiment about a real culture, the Yapese, who live on Yap. And they have these big cylindrically manufactured limestone pieces of stone that they quarry off their island, and at great expense and energy, they quarry it, transport it to their island, work it down into the shape of these stones, and they use it as a form of money. In fact, it's still, at least ceremonially, used today in some cases in like weddings and stuff as a form of money. So these stones are called ray. They were too big to physically move around to different people. But they would simply, if you wanted to do a transaction, one Yapese would say to the other, well, that big ray next to that rock over there by that bush, that's yours now. And then what they do is they would put that into their oral tradition through song. So that is a cursory summary. It might not be, but to an extent, that's accurate, that's true, that's what the Yapese did. But now I want to depart from reality and consider a thought experiment. So the thought experiment is this. What if the people of Yap's oral tradition, their songs that they relied on as a ledger of these transactions that they did, what if it got corrupted in some way, some irrevocable sort of way that they lost the story of who owned what and who gave what to who? Suppose that a charlatan then comes along and he says, I'll keep that history for you. I'll write it down. Who owns what ray and how many? And I'll keep all of the ray. We'll wheel them all into this big warehouse and board it up under lock and key to deter thieves from breaking in, of course. I'll keep my own ledger. It'll be of impeccable quality, right down to the smallest Cheerio-sized ray. And you won't need your songs anymore. Well, the villagers would have been, in a bit of a quandary, but they might have thought this was a pretty great idea to have this outside, seemingly objective person come in, a third party that they could trust to keep their ledger for them. What could go wrong? Well, let's skip ahead 10 years. Everything had been working just fine in this man's system. In fact, he came up with a way to loan ray out to villagers. The ray that hadn't yet been manufactured, but of course were going to be, with an IOU. And he kept track of all these IOUs, and people paid interest rates on them. And of course, all of that got a lot more complicated, and his job became a lot more important to keep track of all those things. The future ray accounts seemed to add extraordinary amounts of money into the Yapese economy, and they funded all sorts of interesting ventures, both foreign and domestic. The man built himself an extraordinary house on top of a hill that he paid for in future ray as well. But then, as often happens, a storm blew through the town and it ripped that warehouse down. And lo and behold, there were no ray inside, not a single one. You see, it turns out the charlatan had been grinding the ray up and making a hand cream out of them that he was hoping to sell in China. But it's okay, he says, it's okay. Despite my poor choices in foreign ventures, I have still kept this impeccable ledger. And it was. And I know down to that last Cheerio-sized ray exactly who owns what, even if the ray don't technically exist anymore. And now, think about it. It's actually better for you, Yapese. We can all stop all that exhausting work of quarrying and manufacturing and transporting. And instead, we can use all that energy on productive things in our society. Wow, sounds pretty good. And best of all, we can keep loaning out that future ray that everybody's loving so much, so our village can keep growing and growing forever. So, I guess the Yap in my hypothetical, if you haven't guessed already, are all of us. And long before most of us were alive, we stopped caring that there was no ray behind our song, right? We stopped caring that there was no gold behind our dollars. We were told by very smart people that that's progress. This is modern monetary theory. And we were all invested in that lie because our houses and our mortgages and our retirement funds and everything was priced in these future ray. We're working away, being paid in these future ray. pretending that the emperor has clothes on. So what, at the end of my thought experiment, thank you for indulging me, what if a new character enters into our hypothetical? Let's call him Satoshi, right? And Satoshi says, hey, yappies, I'm sorry you've been robbed and lied to and forced to transact with that very same charlatan who did the lying to you. I've got a way out of this mess, though. I've got a new ledger. It exists out in cyberspace, so no one can steal it. I know the other guy said that you had to trust him, but you don't have to trust me. I don't control the ledger. All of you who use this new money, let's call it BitRay. All of you who use this BitRay, you control it. You can download the ledger tomorrow yourself and see every transaction that's ever happened on my ledger. And best of all, there's no more printing of future Ray. The code that I'm giving you, the protocol with this ledger, it caps the supply of that money, that BitRay. So if you store your hard-earned money, the economic energy that you've taken from your jobs every day, and you put it in my sound money, my BitRay, you know that no one in the future, whatever their intention, whatever their noble causes they tell you is the reason they're going to do it, they'll never be able to put more BitRay into the universe. Now, the Yappy could excuse themselves if they would be a little bit tentative at first. They hadn't really ever had to think about what it was that made their money system work for so long. So a lot of the things Satoshi was saying, they didn't stick right away. And they had a lot invested in the old system, their whole life worth. But over time, the villagers who started trading in this new Ray, they noticed something remarkable. The other villagers who were still trading in the charlatan's paper, they were paying more and more of that future Ray for this very same things that used to cost less, everything in the village, because the charlatan, to make all the loan repayments, had to keep printing more future Ray. So everything in the village that was priced in that paper system, which was everything, just kept going up in price. And he kept saying, that's healthy. It's normal. And the BitRay, well, it stayed fixed and hard and scarce, and everything was going to zero against it. In fact, this next slide shows what seems to be happening from outside the space station. It looks like that Bitcoin's hurtling by at the speed of light with all that volatility, but in fact, what's really happening is we're the ones hurtling through space. If you look at this next slide, and if you remember that last example I gave of buying the house in 2012, you might have been thinking, oh, well, Garrett, you bought in the wrong place. You bought at the wrong time. I know a guy, I needed that in Sydney, and they doubled their money or tripled their money in 2-3 years, whatever. Okay, but that's not really the point that I want you to get. The point I want you to get is that everything's going down in Bitcoin terms, which is a scarce asset. So in 2014, it would have cost you 3,374 Bitcoin to buy that house. And today it costs you 5. So it's not so much about what these assets are compared to AUD. It's what these assets are compared to Bitcoin, which is the superior money with the superior qualities. That's what this presentation, the story are about. Me and my wife started our journey, like everyone, trying to figure out what we wanted to invest in to protect the energy we already gave at our work for us and our offspring. And it led me to realize what was wrong with the system. And by the time I came out on the other side, the investment angle, it's not really what's having me come up here and give a presentation or maybe do something with this. What's driving me there is the fact that we've got a poison money that's sick, that needs all of us. I just started putting money into Bitcoin. I in no way, this isn't a story about how I hope you didn't think this was one of those presentations about me getting rich. That's not what I meant to do here. You think I'm just gonna get rich? Hang on to the space station, see everybody flow by, all my friends die in a big fiery supernova? What, you think I'm some kind of psychopath? Come on, give me a break. I'm here for everybody. In fact, that's what this whole thing is about. It's about all of us. And I'm trying to hopefully get you excited to engage and to think about everything can be, not necessarily to invest your money in it, but to think about it longer and harder before you just dismiss it next time. Because a lot of the people who are telling you to dismiss it, if you look, are actually part of the system that's. So I'm going to leave this slide up at the end because it is something we can talk about during discussion. The second column is gold. Yeah. Many people talk about Bitcoin as being the digital gold, which in many ways is a good comparison. I make some acknowledgments. First of all, because I probably use some slides and I certainly use some ideas from other people. So the parable of the yap I came up with, but I got a lot of my ideas from Alan Watts on his own parable with gold bankers. And for that, these will all be up on after the live show. I'll make sure to have a recording of these. The one below that is Michael Saylor's videos. So he certainly was very persuasive to me to really get past a lot of the noise and to focus on the energy and the engineering aspect of it and how computational energy and our own economic energy is really going into this Bitcoin. Lyndon Alden's book on broken money gives a really in-depth look on how we got here, starting from how fractional reserve banking and lending started. Very fascinating, and what we can do about it. And only recently, a friend of mine sent me another Everyman sort of thing, but done like 1,000 times better than me. So if you want to see how it's done right, that I thought that was really good. What's the problem? Demystifying why we all need Bitcoin, and there's the link for that. So Izzy, if you'll go back to that other slide, I'll open it up to questions from the audience and online. And feel free, guys, to get another beer or anything. This is a good, all of you guys. I mean, and I know you were frequenting, anyway. So any questions from the audience? You mentioned the gold. Izzy, do we have any questions? Sorry.
Who's holding this bit?
So the question from the audience was, for those online, was where is the supply of Bitcoin and who's holding it? So is about, the protocol says there's going to be almost exactly 21 million Bitcoin that will be mined out over the next 140 years, I think. And every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin that gets mined in every 10-minute increment gets halved. So right now, for the next 4 years, every 10 minutes, there are a bunch of miners competing to come up with a number, that's a gazillion numbers long, and they need a lot of computational power to do. They're rewarded by put that block in the blockchain. I know we didn't talk about blockchain, so I'm just jumping right into everything. Yes, I know. Well, that's good feedback. So I was, an angle to do was to sort of, I get the excitement and stuff, but there probably needs to be a part 2. So a question from the audience is, I still don't know what Bitcoin is. So there's probably a lot of people who were expecting that payoff in the presentation. Bitcoin is really, if I'm trying to be quick about it, a convergence of 4 or 5 different technologies. And it only could really happen at the time it did in 2009, late 2009, with that convergence of technology. So it's not something that could have happened in 2000. It pretty much happened as soon as it could. So it was a convergence of cryptography and a convergence of proof of work and a convergence of blockchain. And so I'll go over those just so you understand. Simple. It's, I'm sure, very complex, but the idea is that, you know, you had to get a certain level of cryptography and then to keep people from being able to hack in and to the system and somehow, take your Bitcoin just by hacking your seed through the back door. But the proof of work is, there were attempts at this for years before, including by a gentleman named Adam Beck, who came up with proof of work when I think he was doing eCash. And it didn't didn't have all the features of Bitcoin, but it did have this concept that you couldn't just push a button and print, right? So that's what the central banks can do. They can push a button and print money. There's no work that goes into it. The charlatan in our story confused the YAP by saying that's actually a feature, not a bug. You shouldn't have to go work and make those stone tools. But we might have intuitively known that the YAP making those stone tools and making those stones, that was important. All the work that went into quarrying it and making it scarce is what made it good money. It made it sound money, right? So Bitcoin in the digital space also requires proof of work. So all of these miners that are competing, are releasing tremendous amounts of computational energy and stacking up specially designed ASICs computers to work at getting to make that blockchain. And in fact, most of this year, it costs more money to make a Bitcoin than it did on the market if you were going to sell a Bitcoin. So all these people were working at a loss because it costs like 80,000 US to make a Bitcoin most of this year, which makes you wonder, how are all these smart billion-dollar companies doing this and operating a loss? To me, it's like, okay, yeah, it might be risky, but they also know something. So proof of work, cryptography, and the other one I'll mention is the blockchain technology, the decentralization of the whole thing. So it allows for, not one person to control that ledger. It's being controlled through, a number of different people, anyone who chooses to, run a node in the case of Bitcoin and download that ledger. That's about all I didn't probably go too much into blockchain because I don't know a ton. I will open it up to people who might know more, or if people want to have any more questions.
Does Bitcoin offer that system? Why is it special?
So the question from the audience was, what does Bitcoin offer that other cryptocurrencies don't offer? Why is it special? And I would say that there are a number of reasons, some of which we've already talked about. So decentralization is an important one. You hear about a lot of other cryptos and they will claim to be decentralized, but they're simply not. Usually there's a founder that gets trotted out. They're the CEO. There's a decentralized autonomous organization, or there's a governing body that holds a supply of the Bitcoin, a supply of the crypto that can release a certain amount. The most famous cryptocurrency other than Bitcoin is Ethereum. And they famously, about 5 years ago, to lower energy demand on their miners, changed from a proof of work system, what I was talking about, to a proof of stake system, which is another way to verify these transactions on the ledger. And there were a lot of miners invested in the proof of work system. And what happens anytime that you change the rules or you have the power to change the rules is people who were incentivized and thought that they were on stable ground, in an industry, all of a sudden the rules get changed on them and they got rug pulled, a lot of those Ethereum miners. So Bitcoin, you can't do that. It's very conservative. There were attempts to. And, there are now, I think, something like a few thousand that get printed every day or something, new cryptos, because it's so easy now to just pump these things out. A lot of meme coins and stuff. It was, I think 30 or 40,000 of these like a couple years ago, but I think it just exploded exponentially. And now I don't even know if they can keep track of it. There's AI that are making cryptos. So, I will say one more point on that question, because it's interesting, is, a lot of people will say that Bitcoin was started in a pretty incredible way that it would be very hard to replicate today. You had a founder in Satoshi who did just what he did to the app. He came, he showed them a way through Bitcoin, and he put out famously the white paper, which told people about what he was trying to do, and he had the open software that anybody could run. So he showed them a way, he gave it away, and then he went away. No one knows his or their identity, right? To this day. If he revealed it, he'd probably be among the wealthiest people in the world. He mined the first million Bitcoin along with other people, but those Bitcoin in the ledger, you can see every transaction that ever happened. And those have sat in the Satoshi wallets for 15 years now without being moved. So there's every bet that he showed away, gave it away, and went away. And that means that Bitcoin is for all of us, and for us to decide what to do with and how to use it as a tool. Those are some of the reasons. Like I said, the main thing is I do encourage you guys, if you're interested, because the further you go with it, it's like a thread to a sweater that just keeps pulling. Any other questions? Izzy, do we have any online questions? Nothing yet? Okay. Yeah, so it is, you have what is a private key that tells you, it's a long series of numbers and characters that you can store on a hard drive or whatever, and on the universal ledger that somehow connects to that. And the only way to move that Bitcoin is if you have that private key. And in the early days, that would have been probably very difficult to obtain and get. Now there's exchanges, you can buy it, the Bitcoin, and then they'll hold it for you. You don't really own it at that point because it's just on that exchange. And so you're going to want to get some sort of private wallet to then hold it. And instead of having to hold that long series of numbers, they now reduce that to a combination of words, either 12 or 24 words that they call a seed phrase. And so the power of that is, if you were in those California fires, or if you're in, Syria or a war-torn area, and you need to escape, which it sounds like, we're in Australia and we've never really had to do that, the inception of the country. It does happen a lot. And when it does, people bring jewelry and they bring gold and they bring what they can carry. And it's like, oh shit, like my bank's closed on me. I can't bring my house. What dear family heirlooms and wealth can I bring? And so we don't think about that, but that does happen all the time. And, if you have Bitcoin, you just have a phrase in your head. Even if you lose that wallet, you can still get the manufacturer to send you another one, and that seed phrase will reseed. So it's a very powerful technology for this part, unconfiscatable, right? So if you are a dissenter, in any way with government of the day, they can't freeze your bank account. They can't limit your who transacts on the blockchain because they don't control the blockchain.
The government stepped in to try and help people who've lost their cryptocurrency.
The question was, did government step in to help people with their cryptocurrencies? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I know that, when you deal with like entities like FTX that went bankrupt, They have a number of cryptocurrencies on their books, hundreds of millions. They had like whatever, even though they went bankrupt and they said they had 24 billion and it turns out they had 14 billion. They still had $14 billion worth of whatever, Bitcoin, Solana, whatever they were trading. So that then goes through bankruptcy courts. That gets handed over to government, and then government helps, pay people back for what they lost. That happened with Mt. Gox, which was an early way to buy Bitcoin, and it's still only got paid out, and it's getting paid out over the course of this year. Governments serve the useful function of bankruptcy proceedings. So I think a lot of people think because Bitcoin was started by a lot of probably government suspicious people or crypto anarchists. Certainly, it's a big tent. I'm all for government doing functions, that are important and can only be done in a centralized fashion, but we need to be funding them to do it, right? We pay them for the services they provide. We've gotten distorted where we think that government somehow provides money. That's only because they print it. We should be limiting government to the things that we can afford for them to do. There's been lots of commentary. So the question was, this looks like it might be attractive to the mafia or something. Unconfiscatable comes to mind. And while it's unconfiscatable, it's actually not particularly useful to crooks and criminals. In fact, most crooks and criminals trade in the trillions in USD, in US dollars, and only a fraction in Bitcoin. Even if you were to take the percentage, the pro rata, it trades a lot more. Now, why is that? It's because, like I said, the ledger is actually open for everyone to see. So while you can have a private wallet, no one knows who's behind that wallet. The Bitcoin comes in some sort of ransom, right? And it gets transferred to them, or they somehow, hold a gun up to someone and get their seed phrase and get their millions of dollars in Bitcoin. That's fine, but the FBI is now watching that wallet. And there have been multiple instances, enough to where I think crooks are asking for money to be paid in Bitcoin less and less, because you can't get it out. If you want to use fiat, then you have to eventually, go to an exchange, move that money to an exchange, or even some sort of like back deal. But the feds are onto it. And there's been many instances where these criminals have been caught. I can't remember offhand. But what's interesting is I think that'll happen less and less. There's actually cryptos that are better for if you're going to do something illicit than Bitcoin. Any other questions? I can cut off the live stream. We can have some drinks. Keep talking. You've got another question, Michael, I can tell.
Do you think will legitimize?
So Michael's asking, what do I think will legitimize Bitcoin? Well, I think that brings up a very interesting observation, which is that it's not yet legitimized. That's kind of what you're implying, which is interesting, right? Because you have a situation, you can't pay your taxes with it, right? Well, it is, there are people, Bitcoiners, who would probably say that it needs to be something you pay your taxes with, or you need to be able to. It's really reached its zenith when you can step out and wave your phone over it and buy a cup of coffee. And if that's what you mean by legitimizing, I would push back and say, I don't think it ever needs to do that. I can already wave my phone and buy coffee with my Australian dollars. And I've got a lot of companies that are fine, that I'm okay using, Visa, MasterCard, PayPal. And while all of these companies charge a fee, which, they're big companies, and, it's 10 cents here, 20 cents here, than the coffee, but that's not really going to excite me. And it's certainly not going to get people excited about Bitcoin if you're saying you're going to save 20 cents on coffee. So, and it's also takes longer to settle, right? It's instantaneous with Visa or MasterCard, pretty much. They can do something like 20 or 30,000 transactions per second. Bitcoin can do, I think, 7 or 8 transactions a second. So it's inferior with the speed of transactions. However, on the speed of settlement, you actually get that money. Whereas when I pay with a coffee with a Visa, Visa then talks to banks and that money doesn't actually settle for a long time, whether you're using Venmo or using something like that. So if you want to move $1 billion from here to Japan tomorrow, that's what you do. It's what Michael Saylor, which is in that last slide, tries to get people to think of it as, should be the global world reserve capital, right? There are $900 trillion in capital, whether it's $300 trillion in the real estate property market and, 20 trillion in cash and, 30 trillion in fine art. You add it all up and it comes out to $800 or $900 trillion. Bitcoin's 0.1% of that. And it's superior to all those things as a store of value, right? So it's in demand because it's awesome to live in it. And someone wants to live in it. And you're willing to pay whatever you pay in to live in it. But we've got so distorted that it's the best source of investment. Safest houses, back to my thing, because it protects that wealth better than AUD or USD, or so many other things. And that you always can fall back and live on it. But there's probably more that we pay for a house in Sydney simply because, a Chinese person a Chinese citizen who's trying to get some money might buy in Sydney. We know they're not going to live there. They see it as a store of value, right? In Egypt, they might do something similar. Their currency inflates like up to 20% a year. We don't realize that because ours is inflating at something that we think is manageable. But if you lived in a thing that you lost years, man, it'd be great to just have a phone and the ability to get Bitcoin where you can't even get USD. They'd be happy with USD, So I think that it's already can be legitimized in that sense. The other ways it's legitimized is as a store of value. It's already, you can legally go onto an exchange, buy it. It's considered, a capital investment. You are going to pay capital gains on that in, the jurisdiction you're in. And you are, the SEC, the Security Exchange, is sort of body regulating trading in the US has ruled that it's a commodity, not a security. And it trades like a commodity. And they approved exchange traded funds with Bitcoin, unlike the other cryptocurrencies. Other than Ethereum, there's only the 2 exchange traded funds. So it's already being legitimized in of the world. It's being legitimized in the financial systems of the world as we speak. And the adoption rate's only going up, incredibly faster than at the adoption rate of the internet, actually. I want to get a drink. We can keep talking, but I'll stop. Who was online? Once again, my name is Garrett Smith. Thank everybody who helped me today. All the many people who showed up in live and online. I'll try to get a recording of this up as soon as possible. Good night.